side effects of hormone therapy, herbal and complementary medicines are much preferred by women for the treatment and management of their perimenopausal symptoms. In this summit, we have covered so far so many holistic approaches to feel and stay balanced during perimenopause. Now, I have a guest expert, Robyn Srigley, with me, who guides women to use herbalism, cycle syncing, and the moon to support their healing journey. She is a menstrual cycle and mindset coach and host of the Well Sisters podcast. Her own health struggle with the polycystic ovarian syndrome and hypothyroidism made her figure out ways to support herself and her women clients to feel good no matter what. Welcome to the Thrive in Perimenopause Summit, and this is your awesome host, Sonal Singhal. And here I have with me Robyn. So hello, Robyn, and I am so happy to meet you once again, and this time in Thrive in Perimenopause Summit.
Hi, yes, I'm super excited to be here. Perimenopause and symptoms of it affect so many women, so I'm really excited to chat about a few things today, some herbs and stuff like that. It's going to be good.
So Robyn, let's start with your own health issues. I wonder, how did you manage to get them under control?
Yeah, for sure. So I have polycystic ovarian syndrome and hypothyroidism. I found out about these conditions after coming off the birth control pill in my early 20s, so a little over 10 years ago. And all the doctors had to offer me for these issues was medication. So more birth control, hormones, that kind of thing. And I didn't want to take that route. I'd already been on birth control in the past. I came off it for many different reasons, including side effects and the risks associated with using it. It messes with your own hormonal patterns. And so I was kind of left with no support, right? Because the doctors had the pills. I didn't want that. So what was I to do? I was in nutrition school at the time. And so I consulted with a lot of my teachers. I did a lot of research. And ultimately, it was trial and error of the different things that I had read about to help with my PCOS, to help with my menstrual cycles and the other hormonal issues that I was experiencing. And so what I ended up realizing was that when I was able to combine what I was eating, so what I was choosing to eat in terms of diet and that kind of thing, with some really targeted supplementation. And a lot of this was herbs. I relied heavily on herbs, and we're going to talk about herbs today. So I'm really excited. But in doing that, I was able to restore my menstrual cycles. I was able to reverse the majority of the symptoms that I was experiencing. And for those who aren't familiar, one of the issues with PCOS is potential fertility struggles. And I was told I would probably not be able to ever have kids. But I got my body to the point with these kind of natural interventions that I was able to get pregnant. My son is just turned 3 about a week ago. And so it's really exciting for me to share these kinds of things because it really works. I mean, it really works. And so we're going to talk about a little bit different than a fertility journey today, because we're talking about perimenopause. But it really comes down to kind of the same things of how are we going to support ourselves, whether it's food, herbs, which we're going to talk about, and they can make a bigger difference than even medications can, I find, in a lot of experiences.
I feel, Robyn, because your son is so young that you're still not in perimenopause.
Right.
But so in that case, maybe you are having experience of your clients who are having perimenopausal issues. So yeah. I just wonder, what are the most common issues they are coming up with?
For sure. So, and it's interesting because a lot of the women who are going through perimenopause also might be potentially wanting to have kids later in life too. I think one of the herbs we might talk about later will address this, but usually perimenopause is starting somewhere around age 45. Although knowing the age that your mom was when she went through menopause is a good predictor. Perimenopause typically is lasting anywhere from 2 to 10 years. And this is essentially when your body is transitioning to menopause. So from your fertile years of hopefully regular cycles, ovulation, kids, if that was what you wanted, things like that, into menopause, which is the total cessation of the menstrual cycle. So not having a period anymore, your ovaries are not producing hormones in the same amounts anymore, and those kinds of things. And so this transition can be quite tumultuous. There can be a lot of different symptoms that come up. Some of the major ones that I see with my clients include mood changes, so anxiety, depression, irritability, things like that, low libido, vaginal dryness, trouble concentrating, so like brain issues, concentration, poor memory, brain fog. There's a lot of heat associated with perimenopause, so headaches, night sweats, hot flashes, just sweating more in general. There can often be sleep problems or insomnia associated with this. I often see this too with women who experience a lot of anxiety around this time in their life that causes more trouble sleeping. And then there's going to be the hormonal changes or the menstrual cycle changes. So your cycle is likely going to look different in perimenopause than it did before that. So your cycle as a whole could be shorter or it could be longer. It can go back and forth between long cycles and short cycles. And then there can be changes within the menstrual flow. So what I see most often is that there's going to be changes with pain, the amount of flow, and how many days they're bleeding. And this can go both ways. They can experience more pain, more cramping with their periods, or less. They can experience a heavier flow than usual. This is pretty typical, like at the beginning of perimenopause, or a much lighter flow. And you may be bleeding for more days than you used to. So maybe if you were bleeding 5 to 7 days, maybe you're bleeding 10 days now or something, or having fewer days of bleeding. And what I typically notice is that the symptoms of the bleeding and the menstrual cycle changes are more intense or severe at the beginning of perimenopause. And then as you get closer to actual menopause, things tend to lighten. So the cycle will shorten, the amount of bleeding your experience will lessen, the pain will typically lessen, less clots, less days of bleeding, that kind of thing.
Okay. You mentioned about hot flash, and if you read about perimenopause, you will definitely find this term. It's like a synonym, for perimenopause. I wonder, like, according to your diagnosis, what is the root cause of having a hot flash?
So there's different reasons why you might be experiencing hot flashes. In perimenopause, because your hormones are declining, the main one being estrogen, low estrogen levels can create the hot flashes and the night sweats. The other thing to pay attention to as well is the liver. So if your liver is sluggish, and if you've used a lot of medications in the past, a lot of toxin exposure, perhaps your diet has got a lot of processed foods in it. There's lots of different reasons why the liver becomes sluggish. That can also create night sweats and hot flashes as well. And then the last little piece, and I think we're going to talk about this with some of the herbs shortly, is if you take the perspective of like traditional Chinese medicine or these other Eastern healing philosophies, they'll call this excess heat in the body, literal heat, because you're hot with the hot flashes, but it's also an energetic heat that can create symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, sweating in general, headaches, heavier flow with the period, weight gain, frequent urination, those kinds of things. And so what we want to do in order to deal with these symptoms is to clear that heat.
So with that, I wonder, like, what is your criteria for herb selection, for treating the symptoms, like various symptoms of perimenopause?
Right. So first of all, we have to figure out like what are the symptoms that you're actually experiencing. And typically, if you're going to be using herbal medicine to support yourself, there's going to be more than one herb or more than one formula involved. And so for me, with my clients, typically what I will do is 2 different formulas. One is kind of like a daily, usually it's drops or capsules that you take to help balance out the hormones as much as you can during this transition, and help clear some of the symptoms that are causing you problems and discomfort. And then the other aspect of this, usually what I would provide is an herbal tea formula. So something that can be taken either through the day or before bed to really calm the body. And we'll kind of talk about some of those herbs, and also to support sleep and some of the mood changes changes that you might experience within perimenopause.
So Robyn, the herbs which you are using or which you are prescribing, so are these available like over the counter or from where? I mean, or do you provide them to your clients?
Right. So a lot of the herbs, for example, like peppermint tea is really good for people in perimenopause. Like that's something that's widely available pretty much anywhere that you can buy tea. But anyone who has access to health food stores can get this locally. They're all widely available online. The one thing that I will say about using herbs for the most part, except for things like a simple mint tea or a chamomile tea, which is pretty much safe for everyone, is to really work with a practitioner who can figure out what the specific herbs that you need are and what the best way is to take them for your symptoms. So like for me, with my clients, if I know that a company makes a formula that would work really well for them, I will suggest it and they can grab that. And if not, we can do custom stuff, right? So figuring out what you need and putting together a formula that's made like individually just for that one person.
Okay, I am getting another question. I mean, is there any herb available easily which can have a problem if you take without consulting a practitioner?
Right. So obviously in this context, like I can't say this is right for everyone or like go do this, but generally regarded as safe herbs would include things like chamomile, which is very calming. So it's good if you're experiencing like mood and sleep issues around perimenopause, and it also supports digestion, which can become sluggish. Another one is peppermint. This is a cooling herb. So we were talking about that excess heat, right? With hot flashes and night sweats and things like that. So peppermint is very safe. It's cooling. It's calming as well. So again, can be taken, as a tea, let's say during the day. You can have it as iced tea if you want, if you're really hot and you can't have a hot beverage. Those two are really quite safe. And then the other one that I would say is mostly safe for pretty much everyone is going to be sage. This is really well documented in helping women with perimenopausal and...
I lost you again. Wait.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You were talking about sage.
Okay. All right. So sage would be another one that's generally going to be safe for most people. It's very well documented for helping with all kinds of perimenopausal and menopausal issues. Because it's a cooling herb like peppermint, it's going to help to clear the excess heat of perimenopause. So sweating, hot flashes, night sweats, headaches, frequent urination, heavier menstrual flow, those types of things. And it's widely available. I mean, you can literally grow it in your garden very easily, but it's often used as a tea. It can be combined with some of the other herbs like chamomile or peppermint that I was just mentioning in order to help with the nighttime stuff. So night sweats, insomnia or sleep problems, anxiety that might come up at night, things like that, just really to calm the body down. And it can even be brewed as a tea, chilled, put in a spray bottle and used as like a cooling spray. So if you're someone who's really struggling with this heat and the hot flashes during the day, you can literally spritz your skin with sage tea, as well as taking it internally if you wish, in order to help calm those hot flashes, night sweats, and that excess heat.
So Robyn, I wonder like how long one should take these herbs for, and like, is there a limit, like how much we should be consuming it, and what else? I think that's all.
Yeah, so definitely there is. Some herbs are generally safe for longer term use. For example, peppermint and chamomile are great for most people to have, if you're just having a cup of tea at night. But there are other herbs that can be extremely beneficial that can only be used for a short period of time, sometimes 3 to 6 months. You really do have to consult with a practitioner in those cases because the dose will change depending on you as an individual and what's going on in your body. And also they'll be able to kind of keep in contact with how your symptoms are going to determine when you're going to finish using these herbs. Like, for example, we haven't talked about it yet, but there's an herb called black cohosh, which is a really good one for women with perimenopause, but it's not something that I would say, you know, in this talk, just go to your store and pick it up and start taking it, because how you take it, how long you take it, when you take it, all of those things will really depend on the individual and do require a practitioner to, you know, properly recommend that for you.
Actually, I did purchase black cohosh tablets from Holland and Barrett, and I never used those because I was wondering like how to take, you know, I was not confident about it.
Yeah. And that's one thing about herbs, right? It's one thing to have a tea like the chamomile, peppermint, sage. That's very easy for people to understand, you know, but if you're using something like capsules like you purchase, or you're using a tincture, which is drops of an extract of an herb, it can be confusing about what to do and how to use it. So definitely consult a person if you can. And like with black cohosh, for example, this is an herb that's used for women of all ages, not just perimenopause, but specifically for perimenopause and menopause. You know, it helps with mild depression, symptoms like the hot flashes, night sweats, libido changes, menstrual flow changes. It's also a little bit of a sedative, so it's good for sleep, and it's a muscle relaxant. So if you're dealing with sleep issues, tension and stress, if you're having more aches and pains in your body than you used to, black cohosh can be really, really wonderful. And it has effects that are comparable to like synthetic estrogens that your doctor might prescribe for perimenopausal symptoms without having to take that synthetic hormone. And it does not have an estrogenic effect on the body. So it doesn't work directly on hormones, which is good because that can be problematic for some people, but it's kind of indirectly working on all of this. And there's a really good amount of evidence for black cohosh for helping with all of those kinds of issues in perimenopause and also menopause.
So is there any specific herb for irregular menstrual cycle?
Yes. So one thing that I do want to mention about irregular cycles in perimenopause is that that's kind of normal. Because you won't be ovulating as often, because your ovaries are not producing hormones in the same amount and at the same times that they used to, your cycles will likely change. So you may have cycles, let's say you had 28-day cycles always prior to this, and now you're experiencing cycles that are 40 days, 50 days, 60 days, or maybe you're having some cycles that are 21 days, 24 days, and they kind of are flip-flopping. This is kind of normal because your body is slowing down hormone production. Your ovaries are not working at the same capacity. And so when it comes to balancing hormones here, we're really not looking to necessarily regulate the cycle and bring it back to every 28 days, because the idea is right now your body is working towards not having one at all. So what you're really thinking about when it comes to whatever you're doing, whether it's herbs or other things, is to support the reduction of certain symptoms that are happening in the meantime. So for example, maybe you're having heavier periods. Yeah, your cycles may be longer or shorter, but maybe they're heavier. So you can do things to help reduce that heavy flow, for example. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, somewhere you need to accept that changes are happening within your body and just go with the flow. So
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, don't push yourself to normalize something as per your norm, because this is not what it is.
Yeah.
So do you want to say any other specific herb for period or hormonal changes?
Yeah, I would. So there's a few that can be really helpful. So a few times in our conversation, I've mentioned, heavier bleeding that can be part of perimenopause, especially kind of towards the beginning. You might be bleeding for longer than usual, and it might be heavier. Maybe you're using more pads and tampons than normal. Maybe you're getting more clots, that kind of stuff. That is definitely something that can and should be addressed, because you don't want to be losing excess blood, right? That can affect a lot of different things in your body. And so there's an herb which can be used as a tea, capsules, drops, whatever. It's called yarrow, Yarrow. And it's an herb that's used to stop excessive bleeding. And so this can be used very, very effectively, potentially in the few days before your period starts, as well as through your period, in order to lighten any heavy flow that you might be experiencing. So yarrow, the black cohosh, which we already talked about, both of those are really going to help with the wonky kind of hormonal patterns and period symptoms that might be coming up at this time. The other one that I do want to mention is more towards, yes, it's going to help balance those things, but it's also going to help with like libido and vaginal symptoms of perimenopause. So vaginal dryness, pain with sexual intercourse, not having any sexual desire, seeing that go way down. This can be a very, very difficult symptom or set of symptoms to deal with, especially for women who are partnered. And so therefore want to have a libido and still want to have that aspect of their life without pain, without symptoms, without having to force it. And so there's an herb called shatavari. It's an Ayurvedic herb. It's amazing. It's one of my absolute favorites for this group of women, perimenopausal. It supports mild depression, it's calming, it helps to relieve stress and anxiety, but it also helps to support the hormonal patterns, to boost libido, to boost like lubrication in the body. So lubrication vaginally, but also in the joints, which can sometimes get stiff and achy in perimenopause. And then at the very top of our conversation, I mentioned some women going through perimenopause are also still trying to conceive, they're in their 40s trying to have a baby. This is a really good one. If you're in your 40s and you are trying to conceive, but you're having these wonky hormonal things, maybe because of perimenopause, shatavari is a really, really good one for also helping to boost fertility at this time.
So again, all these herbs like shatavari, black cohosh, and yarrow, these are all available in tea form, or they are all capsules?
So yarrow can be used as a tea or capsules or a tincture, which is drops. The black cohosh and the shatavari, I prefer in either capsules or drops. They're not going to be as effective as a tea, and they also really don't taste good. So you're probably not going to want to drink it. But if you're taking it in capsules or drops, it's not going to have that same effect on the taste buds, and they'll be definitely more effective in that way. You'll also probably notice, if you're looking online at supplements, capsules, especially like formulas for perimenopause, things like that, or like a supplement for hot flashes, you'll often notice a combination of a bunch of these herbs in there. And if you see a practitioner, an herbalist, or someone like myself, a nutritionist, whatever, who has experience in this, and they can put together something for you that's like totally custom to what you're experiencing, the rate at which you begin to feel better is going to be much faster than if you are just trying to kind of like piecemeal pick things yourself. The exception to that would be just teas at nighttime to relax you, like the chamomile, peppermint, or sage that we were talking about before. Those are very safe for everyone to try.
Is there any herb for specifically for brain fogginess? Because this is such a common issue, like, so I'm talking to you and then I don't know what to talk,
Yes, for sure. Yeah, the brain fog, memory issues, concentration, this can all go down. And again, it's because our hormones are diminishing in perimenopause. One of my favorite herbs for this one is ashwagandha. It's another Ayurvedic herb. It's an adaptogen. So basically what that means is it's helping your body to adapt to stress. This one is quite calming, so it's not overly stimulating. There are some adaptogens that really give you a pep in terms of your energy. This is not like that. It's pretty calming, which is nice. It's great for when you're feeling tired and wired. So like you might be flat out exhausted, but by the time you go to bed at night or you try to go to sleep, your mind is like going and going and going and it won't shut off. This is a good one. If you're experiencing any of those kind of brain or cognition issues, brain fog, memory issues, concentration, if you're having aches and pains in your body because of perimenopause, ashwagandha is a really, really good one to help kind of sort those things out without being too stimulating. And it's quite safe for most people. Traditionally, it would have been used the powder mixed with milk as a drink before bed. You can certainly access the powder online or in health food stores, but it's also available in capsule and drops as well that can be used
How
depending
much
on.
is the recommended dose for ashwagandha?
That will depend on the individual. I really can't share dosages on a platform like this.
Yeah.
But and again, it really
Something
depends
minimal,
on
something minimum, which is safe for everybody. Something minimum.
right. So safety for everybody, again, I can't do that. I can't say that on a platform like this.
Because why I am asking, because it's such a common thing, ashwagandha, and people are purchasing and they are taking on their own.
Yeah. For people that I don't work with, I can't share doses. I can say, for most people, when it was being used in that culture within Ayurveda as that nighttime drink I was talking about, so the powder mixed with warm milk taken before bed, generally when you're buying the powder, it'll either have a scoop inside to the correct amount, or it'll be an amount of teaspoons of the powder that you're going to want to look at. And if you're just taking it that once a day as your drink, then go for what it says on the package. Depending on what the powder is, it's going to vary from
Place to place, from
yeah, exact brand to brand and that kind of thing. But if you're wanting to use it beyond just a comforting drink at night and you want to use it medicinally, especially for like the brain issues that we were talking about, cognition, focus, memory, brain fog, all of those things, it'll need to be dosed through the day, and the amount that you take really is individual. And you'll need like a proper practitioner if you want to be using this properly.
So I feel, it is always much better to approach a practitioner, especially when it comes down to herbs. But as you said, there are 2-3 herbs which are safe for everybody, because we are taking them as tea or drinks.
Exactly right. So the sage, peppermint, chamomile, I mean, that's pretty much safe for most people. For people who have acid reflux and peppermint feels a bit too strong, they can use spearmint instead with the same effects. The ashwagandha, again, can be taken as a drink in the evening with relative safety. But again, if you're on any kind of medications like with ashwagandha, at least definitely check with your doctor. The other 3 is totally fine. But anytime you're supplementing, whether it's herbs or other nutritional supplements, vitamins, minerals, like those kinds of things, you really want to work with somebody, because you could be taking the totally wrong thing and wasting your money down the drain because you've bought it and you read about it, you thought it was going to help, and those kinds of things. It's a lot different than just changing your diet, right? When you make diet changes, for the most part, anybody can decide what they want to do with their food. I want to take this out and I want to add in more veggies. I want to drink more water. Those are safe things, right? But when it comes to
you give that type of advice also because you are a nutritionist.
Correct. Yeah. So my approach is always food, lifestyle, and supplementation. This is what I give in my protocols with everybody. So we talk about the food stuff, what needs to happen there with the diet. We talk about lifestyle. So like sleep, getting enough sleep, stress, movement, exercise, all of those things. And then we talk about supplementation, which for me, because I study herbalism and I love herbal medicine, is going to include herbs, but it also may include like vitamins and minerals and different things like that.
So you do prescribe sometimes minerals also. What type of minerals?
So for some people, it's just as simple as taking a multivitamin and mineral supplement. For others, for example, like if you're experiencing a lot of the sleep and mood issues associated with perimenopause, something like magnesium is very helpful. It's generally safe for most people. If you take too much, you're going to have loose bowels. So you're going to kind of know, and you can back off from there. But it's generally safe for most people. So like things like that. But some people need trace minerals, and I might give them drops. Like there's a lot of different nuances to this. And so if you're thinking about choosing supplementation for yourself, if you're really struggling with your symptoms, then definitely consult a practitioner. Just like if you wanted a medication, right? Like a prescription medication, you have to go to a doctor, tell them what's going on, and they'll kind of determine the best medication for you to take going forward. It's the same idea.
So, Robyn, how do you figure out about the mineral deficiency or the micro mineral deficiency?
There's different ways to test for that. So you can do some blood work. So there are some tests like an RBC magnesium, if we're talking about magnesium still. So that's a blood test to look at the level of magnesium. You can test for your iron, your B12, vitamin D, all of those things through the blood. And there's also other testing like hair mineral analysis. So basically this is you send in a sample of your hair to a lab, and they test it, and they can let you know kind of what your base is of minerals, like what's okay, what's deficient, what needs work, maybe what there is too much. So if you work with a practitioner, typically you can't just buy those tests yourself. You have to go through a practitioner of some kind for those, and they can help you interpret what the results say. But the hair mineral analysis is quite nice if severe deficiencies are thought to be there.
So you can ask them, I mean, you can write for them and then they can go ahead and get it done from somewhere.
Right. So like if you're going to do a hair mineral analysis, you can't just go online and purchase a test yourself as a regular person. You need to be working with someone, whether it's a nutritionist or a naturopathic doctor or a medical doctor or any of those kind of people who have accounts with these companies and can order the test for you.
And I'm sure it's not covered by insurance because they don't cover such.
Nope. Unfortunately not.
So Robyn, what is the best way to connect with you in case somebody wants to connect?
Yeah, for sure. So my website, thehormonediva.com, there's a contact form on there. You'll also see a lot of blog posts. You'll see my podcast. You'll see my coaching offerings. Links to all my social media are there. So if you're looking to find me anywhere or contact me, definitely hit up my website, thehormonediva.com.
Yeah, I noted that you have a nice podcast. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the host of the Well Sisters podcast, and I have a lot of fun with the podcast because it's kind of like these conversations where we get to go more in depth on certain topics. So you'll find lots of good episodes there talking about different hormonal things and how we can help to support them. I update that fairly regularly, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Sometimes I have guest experts on there as well. For example, I've had guests talking about castor oil packs, which are amazing for hormonal issues, yoni steaming, you name it. Lots of the different modalities that maybe you're not familiar with. I like to bring experts on for those as well.
So if somebody wants to have a look at new modalities, what you're exploring, they can go and have a look at or listen to your podcast.
Definitely.
So thank you so much, Robyn, for coming on the Thrive in Perimenopause Summit. And it was lovely connecting with you and getting to learn about all the different herbs available to treat the perimenopausal symptoms. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.